Wow, look at those numbers grow. Good morning, everyone. I'm looking at everyone coming into the room. I love to see the numbers go higher and
I
higher.
love it too, Lauren. It's so awesome. And our frequent flyers are coming in. This is just great.
Yes, they are. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the Small Business Development Center, or the SBDC. You have joined us for SmallBiz Talk, Solutions for Your Small Business with Lori Williams. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning, Lauren. Here we are again.
Here we are. And as Lori mentioned, good morning to all of our frequent flyers, those of you who join us every single week. For those of you who are new, you can join us every single week. We are here Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. And with that, I am going to do a brief overview as to who we are. The SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center, is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country. That said, any city you're in, you should be able to connect with a local SBDC office. And I'm sorry, SBDCs offer no-cost services to local businesses. So again, any trainings like what you're attending today, as well as other services your business may need, please contact your local SBDC office. For those of you within the Los Angeles network, here's a map of our locations. We go as far out as Camarillo, Santa Clarita, over to Pasadena, down to Long Beach. So again, those of you who are in neighboring cities or those in between, please be sure to reach out to us. We'd love to help you. Again, now what we do, the SBDC, or Small Business Development Center, offers no-cost business advising. So you will have the opportunity to work with a business advisor like Lori and all of her colleagues, experts in finance and taxes, experts in marketing, and business planning. Any stages of business that you might be in, there's an expert that can assist you for free. It's free because your tax dollars have already paid for it. So you might as well partake. And we also offer virtual trainings like, again, the one you're attending today, SmallBiz Talk, Solutions for Your Small Business. And again, we're here to help. Contact us today to get started. For those of you in the Los Angeles area, you can contact us at 866-588-7232. You can also reach us online at smallbizla.org/new client, or outside of Los Angeles area, please reach out via internet, to the americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. With that, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share. I am going to do a few housekeeping rules, Lori. So for those of you who have joined us, for our frequent flyers, you already know, please add your questions to our Q&A. For those of you who are new, again, questions in our Q&A so that we can be sure Lori's able to see them and answer them for you. Or have the opportunity to potentially answer them for you. There are a lot of questions that come through online via our form, as well as through our Q&A. So please know that if we don't get to your question today, we'll do our best to do so at a later period. Also know that Lori has a way of being able to look at the questions and then tie in answers into her presentation. So even though she might not say, address you by name and mention your question, she'll a lot of times answer those questions via her presentation. And so, Lori, I will hand it over to you. Oh, I should mention in the chat, I'll be listing links that Lori's mentioning throughout her presentation, as well as links to contacting the SBDC and links to our form. So for those of you who would like to suggest a future show and or submit a question, please use our form. And then I'll also list our YouTube, Lori, so that everyone can have access to our previous shows. All of our shows are on our YouTube channel. So that was a mouthful. Lori, I'll kick it over to you and you can introduce our guest.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you for mentioning all those. And as she said, I'm trying, and Lauren's doing great on gathering all the questions. I see them. A lot of you I'm communicating behind or getting you through the SBDC network to make sure that you're getting the help that you need. So we love the interaction. Please communicate with us. And I also like to express, as I did last time, I try to stay up on every single rule and regulation. Notice how I'm saying that and making little crazy things around my head. It was rather complex even before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, a lot of the government institutions, rightly so, made these unique situations. This is exempt for this time period, or this covers this for over here, and this covers this for over here. So sometimes I have to research, and sometimes I'm thinking, well, you know what, I might have seen this, but I can't, get from my memory. So therefore, a lot of the questions that I look at in the chat, I may come back the following week and then address. Hey guys, that means you got to stay with us. You got to come back next week to see if I address the question or not. So once again, we try to answer as many as I can. I often don't mention the name, but I just kind of intertwine it with the conversation. So before I get involved in introducing our excellent guest speaker, let me go over some questions from last week. Lauren is putting this in the chat for you guys. So there was a question last week, and I can see one again. And this is two questions combined, if you will. But the first question was the employee retention credit. When is the deadline for it? So I had thought, because I had read the first quarter of 2021, and I read that some time ago, and that's what I had in my head. But when somebody asked it last week, I felt like I had seen something that had come across my desk. I am now passed as an enrolled agent with the IRS, and so I get all of these notices, a ton. And sometimes I see things, but I didn't read it in detail. So I went on the IRS website and I pulled this up, and you're going to get the link so you can read it. And what it was saying is that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was signed on November 15th, 2021, okay, so last November, this amended a section 3134 of the Internal Revenue Code, blah, 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 right? But what it's basically saying is it limits the employee retention credit only to wages paid before October 1st, 2021, unless the employer is in a recovery startup business. Now, I'm giving you guys the link because you want to go to the link and learn more about it. It's real specific in detail, but what I'm saying here is there's some new information as of November that changes the deadline for the ERTC. Now, someone also had asked about hiring tax credits in relationship to the PPP. I had assumed what they were talking about was this on hiring tax credits, because there could be, that's kind of a generic one. There could be several different programs they're talking about. So what I was putting in here is this refers to the legislation. ARPA allows small employers that received a Paycheck Protection Program loan to also claim the ERTC. So if you were referring to the ERTC, yes, you can claim both. So that's on the ERTC. There was one of our great listeners last week. I do not recall his name. I want to say Paul, but I might be wrong. So you might know who you are out there, but brought up 100% reduction for meals. And I said, I know it's always been 50%. I have to say 50%. Let me research and get back to you. Once again, I had in the back of my head that I may have seen something about this, So went back to the IRS website. I always go straight to the horse's mouth. I always tell you guys, when you Google, go past all the ads and stuff. Try to get your information from the government websites. It's going to be correct. Go right to the horse's mouth. So this is the short end. This is my, short end of it. The IRS has allowed a temporary special rule for 100% business deduction for food or beverages from restaurants as long as the expense is paid or incurred 2021 or 2022. So previously, whatever you spent on meals in your business, only 50% was tax deductible. So what they're saying is 100% is going to be tax deductible for these 2 years. So that's a new and unique thing. Once again, I gave 2 links. The first one is the announcement of this change in rule. The second one is also more information about tax credits. I like to take people to the IRS website where they can learn things. Some of the things on the IRS website, granted, it can be pretty complicated to read, but a lot of it, I got to give them credit for this. A lot of it you can read even if you don't have any background in tax, and it gives some clear information to you. So I love giving these links so you can educate yourself. Now, this is another one that I just decided to talk about today because in consulting during the week, I'm getting a lot of questions about it. And that's the home office deduction. Everybody wants to know, can I take a home office deduction? How much can I take? What are the rules, etc.? Once again, this link is going to give you a lot more information on it than what I'm giving you here. But what I'm saying basically is that you can take a home office deduction, but you have to understand the rules regarding that. And so there's 2 methods to calculate. You can either do a $5 a square foot for the business use of the home, and the maximum option is 300 square feet, 1,500, or you can take a regular method, they call it, where you say what percentage of the home is devoted to business use, and then you identify from there what percentage you would take off. But you can go ahead and you can take off your home mortgage and other bills that are towards that, and if you follow the link that Lauren is going to put in the chat, you will be able to identify exactly what we're talking about with that. Okay, so that was just a throw in because I like to include things that I hear people asking me during the week. I figure all the time if one person is asking me, more than that's asking me. So before I introduce our guest, Holly, which I'm going to do in a second here, I want to tell you about some upcoming shows. We're starting to kind of get our shows planned in advance. So next week, David Ronaldo from College Zoom is going to come on and talk to you about his entrepreneurial journey. Now, it's interesting because his background, I met David when I was a professor at USC. He was one of my students, and he had to come up with an idea in class to start a company. Not necessarily that he was intending to start a company. This was part of the class, right? And since then, which I'll have to remind of how long, I think it could be a decade, I don't know. But he basically launched his company from there and has grown ever since. And he's going to come on and share his entrepreneurial journey. Now, the week after that, I've decided I'm going to do these special Ask Lori shows, and I'll put one in every so often, and it's because we do get a lot of questions. A lot of times people want me to address specific questions, and we also have situations, so we're going to have one whole show devoted to this. And this is where I will not only address the questions in Q&A, but I'm really going to ask everybody to go ahead and write to us through the link, and Lauren's going to put the link in where you can send in a question, and you can open it up to a little bit more than just a one-line question. Say there is a situation that you experience as a small business owner and you would like to address the situation. How do you handle this? How do you deal with cash flow? Whatever. I don't want to give questions out there, but what I'm saying is we're going to devote an entire show towards it. So therefore we can not only answer one-off questions, but we can also kind of just talk about things you need to concern yourself about, things you need to be aware of, good practices. My favorite thing is finances. So I'm going to be telling you and answering questions about, types of things you should monitor in your company. But we're really going to get a pulse of what's on you guys' minds, what's out there and what's happening. So that's going to be coming up soon on the show. And then behind the scenes, guys, which I'm working on, we're going to have a panel discussion with some people that are heavily involved in finding loans and different financing options for small businesses. We're going to basically talk to them about, okay, now that we don't have the PPP and a lot of you guys have either applied for the EIDL or applied for an increase already, what's next? Where are the funding coming from next? So we're going to have an upcoming panel discussion on that. Okay, so with that, we're going to get started with our guest speaker. Let me tell you a little bit about Holly, and then she will come on to tell you about her entrepreneurial journey. Now, once again, I've had the wonderful advantage of working with Holly, just as I had with Emma and David that you'll meet. And Holly Eve is the founder, CEO, and creative director of Madame Lemy, a natural and sustainable luxury body care brand. Synthesizing both of her passions, she speaks regularly on entrepreneurship and mental health to a wide range of audience and is a contributing writer for multiple publications, including Forbes and Founder. Holly is passionate about animal advocacy. She lives a vegan lifestyle and enjoys adventuring with her rescue dog, Violet. As a beauty influencer, she uses her platform to spread awareness and advocate an end to cosmetic animal testing. Prior to founding Madame Lemy, Holly worked as a celebrity and TV makeup artist in both New York City and Los Angeles. So with that, I'd like to welcome Holly Eve. Holly, are you out there and can click in? There she is. So wonderful to see you, Holly. Welcome to the show.
You as well. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
It's great. So, I know a bit of the backstory, but our audience doesn't. So I want to start out. Holly, what inspired you to create the product and then launch a company? Because I don't think you grew up saying, I want to be a business owner. I don't think that was your agenda, was it? No, look at the
No.
face. Many of you guys are in that. So how did this whole thing get started, Holly?
Yeah, I'll just say I didn't even know what the word entrepreneurship meant until maybe a few years ago. I still don't fully know what it means, but um, yeah, it was, as you mentioned, I was working as a celebrity and TV makeup artist, and then my close friend was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer at the age of 30, and I learned a lot through her, specifically about products, what we put on our body, what we consume, and how it affects our health. And she kept encouraging me to switch to a natural deodorant and specifically natural products, but specifically natural deodorant. And so I spent years looking for a natural deodorant, and it would either give me a rash, or I would smell worse, or I would still sweat. And I was in close proximity to people working as a makeup artist, so I would always go back to synthetic products. And then I would try another natural deodorant. So I was trying one and I had a really bad rash, and someone had mentioned they saw it, and I told them what it was from, and they said, have you tried lemons? And I said no, but I was willing to try anything because I really wanted to use a natural product. And so I waited for the rash to clear up. I was living in New York. I went to Columbus Circle. I bought a bunch of lemons. It was so effective. And then I realized this is not practical to cut up lemons every day to deodorize. And I had my roommate, and I was putting them in like a box in the fridge. It was just like not sanitary. And so I had this idea at the same time of, I want to figure out how to make this portable and how to turn it into a company. And I was at a lunch with some friends in the West Village, and they were talking about making products. And I just randomly said, this was on May 30th, 2016. I said, I'm using lemons, it works. I'm going to start a company and I'm going to call it Lemy. And from there, I figured out how to turn lemons into powder in my kitchen, not knowing you could buy lemon peel powder. But I'm glad I didn't, because I figured out this process. And then I realized that product, that lemon peel powder alone, the efficacy was different. It didn't work, and it turned my clothes yellow. So DIY, I figured out the rest of the ingredients. My neighbor happened to be an Oxford trained chemist. I knocked on his door. He helped me with the essential oils and the scents. A family friend happened to be the former VP of Elizabeth Arden R&D. I asked for his help. All these people just aligned in my path, and I asked for help. And the idea for, I have one of the products, a high-end luxury sustainable deodorant that was plastic free that women would want to leave on their vanity came. So I just wanted to do high-end packaging with deodorant that I hadn't seen done before. And it all just kind of happened. It was really random.
one of the things, when I met you right about that time. So when I met Holly and she first came to the SBDC, the Pasadena SBDC, the Pasadena Center, and met with me, she was at the stage where the product was kind of near the finalizing of development. I remember that you were getting the final packaging. I also remember, and I might not have ever said that to you, Holly, I was always impressed that she had this vision and she was very strong from day one. I'm going to make the product beautiful. I'm going to make the packaging beautiful. She didn't want to start with it just kind of something put together. You wanted that great visual from the very, very start. I remember that. But also what happens, and I hear so many entrepreneurs where they get the idea, they may even get to the point where they have the product, Holly, but then comes, where do you sell it? How do you start? So people, I think, are going to be really surprised at your answer when I ask you, Holly, where did you first start selling your product?
The Malibu Farmers Market.
I don't think a lot of people expected that. And, with that, talk about it a little bit. And the thing I thought, and we talked about at the time, I remember, is it was a great, can I just say, testing grounds for everything about your product. So why did you start there? How did it help you to get a better foundation to start from?
Yeah, well, I'll say first that with perfecting the packaging, I know that there were well-intentioned business advisors who said, you have this really great product that works because people have been trying it, just put it in some packaging and start selling it. And as it grows, you can change the packaging. And I had this mindset of, I have all of these celebrity clients and public figures that I know from doing makeup. I didn't want to send a product to someone and say, this works, the packaging will be better later. So I just took my time perfecting it. And then once that was ready, I priced it at a high price point where that wasn't really at the time done for deodorant. And at $35, that's what the large, they're 42 now, but at the time I priced it at 35. And where are rich ladies? People said, an advisor said, his exact quote was, you're fucking crazy if you think you can sell a deodorant for $35. And he was half joking, but also like, you have to be realistic of what people will spend. And so I thought, rich women are in Malibu, I'll go there. And before I even launched my website, I went there and they just sold like crazy and no one questioned the price. So I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to sell it at. And then shortly after I launched my e-commerce site, at the time, I think it was Squarespace, and now I have Shopify.
Yeah, and that's what I actually, of course, when you looked at it at first and you were starting out and you told me about the price point, my first visceral response was that. But then when I intelligently, logically thought about your background, I said, Holly has rich celebrities. Holly is in the audience, which is enticing to buy this type of product. And you were setting yourself apart from just some chemicals that were being sold on the shelf. So I really, at first I was thinking, okay, let's see, but it made sense. And I think where it really benefited is you had the vision of the packaging and you had the price point and you had the audience you were going after. When all three are in a line, it works very well. And as we're going to get to as we continue to communicate, if you had not set that price point, that wouldn't have allowed you to grow into the new areas of sales you did. Specifically, your expenses from the days you started out at the farmer's market in Malibu till today have changed significantly. So take us from the Malibu to what happened. Where did it start being sold next and how? And I always like to tell people when I'm interviewing, get us into the details of how you got there, because you got so many people sitting back and they don't want to just know you sold there. They want to say, Holly, how did you make that happen too? So fill us in on the next step.
So yeah, well, with the Malibu Farmers Market, if anyone has a product, I think that's a great place to start with farmers markets. So I just went and applied and got in, and then went on my Squarespace site. And then I started reaching out to stores and boutiques, and I learned a lot through that. The first store that I got into, not having really any knowledge of what a purchase order was, or I just went to stores. And so the first store that I went into, I didn't talk to her with the business aspect or financial aspect in mind. And so I dropped off all the product, and looking back, it was not that many units, but to me, it seemed like a lot. I think it was like 36 units. And I was waiting for a check, and then she said, okay, we do it on consignment. And I didn't know that. And I was kind of frustrated, but from that moment, I learned that as I'm approaching these stores, I have to have rules in place of what works for my business. And to begin with, I had this vision in mind to get into Barney's, and I was really disappointed when I didn't get in there. And I'm so glad I didn't, because they went out of business. And I know friends who have companies there that lost a lot of money. So things happen for a reason. But that was when I started this, that was my target. I thought, I want to be placed in really luxurious stores. I started talking to different sales reps and working with people, and even to this day, on and off, I've tried doing that, and I've just realized that no one can sell my product better than me. And I have these contacts that really just, from then until now, it's just been the time of finding contacts, going to the right events or Zoom events now, and meeting the right people and making connections. And about a year after I launched, Urban Outfitters reached out to me, which is amazing, because it's usually the other way around. And
I remember that.
They found my product somehow, and I got online with them. And then eventually that led to Anthropologie. And then I applied for the Macy's workshop. That's a highly competitive workshop for women-owned, high potential women-owned businesses. And I think there were like 5,000 businesses that applied, and they took 50, and my company was one of them. And that has been a great experience. We were supposed to launch at their Herald Square location. I got accepted, I think March 2nd, and then of 2020, and then everything shut down. And so instead we did the workshop online, and then they put us online, and my product still sold online with Macy's. And yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but the short aspect is I just reached out to stores. I went into stores. I showed up, sent my product, and sent it to a lot of press publications and had features, and it's just really grown mostly organically.
And guys, I got to tell you that Holly is being humble here. Having known her, she worked her butt off. She was on the phone. She was calling. She was trying to be at every event. She was trying to be in 5 events at the same time. So yes, she's being humble, but she pushed her product and worked hard. And going back to Urban Outfitters, there's something I remember specifically, Holly. Remember you calling me, and they had offered to have your product in their company, but they had different rules on packaging, and they had different rules on shipping and SKU numbers. And all of a sudden you were exposed to this whole world of having to have proper SKUs, having the expense, and having no experience on it. And I remember looking through some websites that they gave you where you had to sign up with this third party, you had to get the SKU, you had to get all this correct. So in that, Holly, maybe talk a little bit, not so detailed on everything you had to do, but the fact of how during this process, and as you were growing organically, you had to take on things you had no clue about, you didn't understand, you had to play by the big players' rules, and it cost you additional expense on your product, thank God for your pricing, but also emotionally, there was times it wreaked havoc on you in having to take on all this task. So whatever part of that you want to detail out to everybody listening, I'm sure they'll be glad to hear this experience.
Yeah, I did a video yesterday just on my Instagram, and at the end I said, I didn't know until I knew, and now I know. Something like that. I didn't know any of this, and I asked questions, and I was forced to learn, because if I wanted to be in that store, I had to play by their rules. And what I know now is that companies are inundated with so many products, and it's very systematic. So when you have a company, you have your systems, just like I didn't have a system of how I was collecting payment at first, now I do. And other companies have their systems to flow products in, so it's organized and things stay systematic. And with Urban Outfitters specifically, and I have a plastic-free box, and for their company, it requires you put it and a lot of companies in a poly bag, it goes into my dog.
I see Violet in the background.
Violet has entered the chat. There's been, you have to put in bubble wrap, and then you have to put it in a bag, and then you have to get certain labels from another company that has a specific SKU, and then on the back there needs to be their Urban Outfitters SKU, and then on the bag there has to be a SKU, and I can get into it later, but I was also going through my own like emotional turmoil and trying to figure all of this out. It was really challenging, and it really I think I'm just surprised my hair's not gray from the amount of stress in general that having a business puts on you. It's gotten a lot better, but I just had to learn a lot of new things. And then the first large box that I sent to them, there's certain ways that you ship it with UPS, and there's certain ways you track it. I didn't do any of that, and I didn't keep the receipt. And about a month later, Urban Outfitters was like, "Where is our package?" And UPS lost it, and I had to redo all of that. So it was a nightmare.
You know what I like about what you said, Holly, is as you expressed, people have systems in their company and other companies have systems. And I always talk, one of my favorite words I use a lot is processes. And I always say, I don't care how small you are, you need to have processes internally. But also what I say is that when you're starting to work with another company, ask them in whatever way you want to word it, but it's basically saying, what are your processes? What do I need to do? Walk me through the process of getting my product in your show or in your store, what have you. And that really allows you to see the steps you have to take, because I think so many times people get confused and think just because they're not following the processes, oh, they don't like my product, they're making it difficult, when really it's just a matter of learning the process and following the process. So that was an excellent aspect that you said. So speaking of processes, I know at the same time then from the supplier, from where you're purchasing the product, how you're getting your supplies for the product, that became as much as a headache as well, as you started to look into how to buy more in bulk, buy different things, save money on things. I'm not going to take it any more than from there. I'm going to pass that to you, Holly. What did you go through on that end, and what can we take away as lessons you've learned?
Yeah, well, with so when I was starting for the packaging, when I wanted to do really nice packaging, these boxes, they're magnetized, so it has that little click sound, and there's gold stamped. And when I was calling manufacturers who made packaging, just cold calling, I was getting really high SKUs. I think like at the minimum, when it was really low, 3,000 per SKU. It was usually 5,000 to 20,000 SKUs per units per SKU, which I understand. Companies want to make money, so the more that they're producing, the more money they make, and they don't really want to take on startups, which makes it challenging. And so I went to someone at SBDC, because I'd been going there as I planned all this out. I had all the artwork done, I had the formula ready, and for the packaging, someone at SBDC, Andrew, previously had a skincare line for men, and he told me about Cosmoprof North America. They're back now. For a while, it's shut down because of COVID, but I always advise people to go in person to trade show events to build a relationship. So I met this woman, this Chinese woman. They're based in Hong Kong, Bonnie, and she and I just started chatting and just built a relationship from this day. And I told her what I was doing, and she went back and forth with her boss and somehow convinced him to let me do 500 SKUs per unit, which was amazing because it was a lot less expensive than what other companies were doing. And then I met another manufacturer there who did there's a fluffy puff in there and a sifter, a completely different company. And I told them what I was doing, and they also believed in what I was doing. And, you know, lucky for them, now I have like, my purchase orders are massively larger than when I started. So I think the advice that I would give, when you have an idea, build relationships. That's what I did. And then sell your vision. I really believed in what I was doing, and sold that, and people believed in it and took a chance on me. And then I was making this to begin with in my kitchen, and then in my neighbor's kitchen in New York City, because I I figured out the formula by complete accident. It was my lack of chemistry knowledge of how I figured this out. I was weighing each ingredient in tablespoons, and my neighbor, being Oxford trained chemist, got really frustrated. He said, "You don't weigh things in tablespoons, it's grams, and it has to be a percentage." And he taught me how to do that. So I was just guessing, like, I'll put 2 tablespoons of this and 1 of this, and that's how I figured this out. So I guess the exact ratio that's needed for this to be effective happened that way. So I made it in his kitchen to begin with. I came back on a plane with like hundreds of pounds of powder that I put in the, I brought some on because I thought just in case they lose any. So I checked in like a massive amount of powder, and then they opened it and they're like, TSA does not regulate powder. You can bring as much powder as you want. I'm sure like drugs not allowed, but powdered deodorant's fine. And so they were like swabbing it, and that's how I got it to LA. And then I filled all of these myself. And then when I launched to the Malibu Farmers Market, a woman came up to me and asked if I had a manufacturer. And I said, no, I've been looking for one. Everyone said, no, my company's too small. And she said, oh, I own a manufacturing company, and one of the facilities we do powder. And she took my company on for really small units. And then eventually I found out they were stealing part of my formula and selling it to a large company in Japan that they had. And that was a whole legal battle. And I got out of that. Now I have a really big, great manufacturer in New Jersey, but these were all just learning curves. And a lot of the aspects, it was very do it yourself and building relationships.
And I think part of it, Holly, was just inherent in your personality. As you guys can see, Holly's very outgoing, and she spoke to everybody about what was going on and kept looking for different options for people. And so those of you that are starting a company and more on the shy side, you kind of got to pull yourself out of that at that for that time, because really, really building the relationships are important. I agree. So then, Holly, what I remember is suddenly things started taking off, and I'm just going to start the sentence and you're going to run from there. Then you decided you really needed some help, and you started hiring people and getting different people to handle aspects, and that opened a whole nother door, didn't it? Why don't you just take it from there? Tell us everything that you would like to tell entrepreneurs to be knowledgeable about from your experiences.
For myself, being a very creative person, all of this and all the products I launch and 100 other products that I could launch right now, if I had the capital to do all of it, I would. I could do it with my eyes closed. These things just come naturally to me, and I've always been very creative, and it's been very intuitive to build the creative aspect of this brand. On the other side of the business aspect and the financial aspect and marketing and so many elements that go into building a brand, I either didn't know how to do that or just refused to learn because it didn't interest me. And so when my company started growing and it started bringing in more money, I started hiring people. And even so, I was hiring people at like lower rates that I could afford for them freelancing. So paying them fairly, but for like part-time work, and then adding more people. And then as my company was growing exponentially, I just inherently felt like I should give this person a raise, or if somebody asked for a raise, I would just give it to them. And I spent so much unneeded money on people I hired than was necessary. So that I really, she agrees. I really have had to, Violet, go on, come here. I really had to, I'm so sorry.
No worries. We all got our love animals in or our children in the background.
I think she'll stop. I'm glad she got up because I have on like pink fluffy slippers. So she'll stop in a second. I lost my train of thought. We were talking about hiring. Yeah. And so even recently, probably in the past several months, I've let go of some positions when I just realized I can do those tasks myself. That's been the biggest thing that I've learned as far as hiring people.
And And I also know that you struggled a lot with having the correct knowledge of your financials, knowing what you should be pricing, knowing your profit margins, and getting people in your company to help you with the bookkeeping. I know firsthand some of the frustrations, and I know that's something a lot of the entrepreneurs experience. And I know you probably almost perhaps were sick of me screaming at you, Holly, you got to get these financials together. You can't have the company without managing the financials. So you can even comment on the fact that Lori was screaming at that all the time. But anyway, take it from there, Holly.
Yeah, I now really heavily focus every day at looking at my bank account and the finances and calculating expenses. And I didn't do that. And luckily, I've had you to work with, and you've taught me a lot. Even with you screaming at me and other people, it just did not come naturally to understand to operate a business. You have to be financially in a healthy position. I didn't get that. If more money came in, I spent more money because I wanted to launch something new or add more designs or hire someone more. So I just hire someone to do more work. And I didn't really know like a P&L or a balance sheet or any of that of what to look at. I think I just like magically thought money was going to keep like appearing, and it did, but just it was like a magic trick and it just disappeared. So now I know, and I'm still learning. I didn't study finance. That's not how my brain works. But I think for somebody to have a successful company, you don't have to be 100% skilled at each area, but you have to know fluently the language of each area. And then when you are in a position to hire someone, or whether it's working at SBDC to consistently work with someone, you have to have someone to really help guide you through that. I've also hired the wrong people who, well-intentioned people, no one was doing anything to disrupt my company. It's just they have a different way of seeing things. And I was working with someone at one point who was like a virtual CFO, and I had a marketing person, and the marketing person said, look, when we put this amount of money, this is the ROAS, this is what's growing. And that the CFO just shot down that idea often. She wanted things to be really organic. And there were a lot of opinions she had and advice that she gave that I took thinking that was the direction. And then it eventually came to a point where I let her go and a couple other people at the same time. And I thought, I'm just going to focus on creating and the marketing. And then we put a small amount into marketing. The person that I'm friends with, who's an excellent, just so skilled at marketing, we put a small amount into marketing, and then just slowly increased that. And then it was, I think, 5 to 8 ROAS on every return that we had. And it just, that's what grew my company exponentially. So this is a marketing person who saw this, and then a financial person who just said, like, no, shut that off. And then I've hired other people that have come by recommendation, another accounting company that I've learned from talking to you, they kept wanting to put in apps to monitor the money that was coming in. And this was at the time where my company just grew exponentially, and I didn't know how to manage that type of money. What I wanted to do, what I thought the goal was to do per month, my company tripled that. And it was just an excessive amount of money that I didn't know how to manage, and brought in a new company. And people promise a lot when you hire them, and they don't always deliver that. And so there were just weird apps that they were putting in. It wasn't monitoring or categorizing my financials. They were giving me, they were not giving me the advice that they said that they would. And so I would come back to you to try to like straighten things out. And I'm still cleaning that up now. It's so much better now, but this really was just from, I don't know if it was the inability, but my lack of wanting to learn this, because I didn't think I knew how, or that I could understand or process it. And now I'm just so much noise. Now I'm just so on top of the numbers, and it was hard to let go of a couple people recently, but that freed up some cash flow. And I'm so much more aware of where my money is going now and protective of it, because before it's like if somebody mentioned that they cared about a topic and it was something that was going on in the news and I just thought I need to help that cause, I would give like 2 days of sales to that organization and just giving away a lot of money, and I don't do that anymore.
And that was a really, really good sharing. And guys, just to add to some of the things that Holly was speaking about, from my perspective, is a great learning opportunity. Is that when Holly came to me, I realized that she had increased the sales. So there was a lot of transactions coming through, a lot of data. And the accounting company was wanting to just do this app that syncs with this and syncs with this, but it didn't give enough reporting. But more so, my fear, it didn't have quality checks. There was opportunity for inaccuracy. It wasn't being managed properly. And the other aspect is that while all these numbers were coming together in the accounting, Holly, which at the very beginning, when it was really tiny and Holly she was managing, saying, I bought this for this, I paid this for this amount, I'm selling it for this, because you can micromanage when you're selling a few things at the farmer's market, but suddenly all the money's coming in, the money's coming out. And so one of the biggest things I said to Holly that really made a difference, and you can comment if there was so, I said, Holly, you got to go back to basics. I want you to do an Excel document that looks at every single product, identifies the cost of that product to produce, what you're selling it, what the profit for that product is, how many of those products you sell, and how that relates to the expenses. So a lot of it, for people to understand finance, when you talk to a finance person, they can talk balance sheet and ratio analysis and all this. But if you talk the entrepreneurial language, the person understands, I pay this much to make something, I sell it for this, I got this much left over, and I got to pay for the expenses. And that's the part that you need to keep your thumbs on. And so after Holly and I had a very hard conversation, Holly sent an email, said, I'm ready for the next appointment. And lo and behold, beautiful spreadsheets, each product broken down, the cost, how much it was to produce, everything. It took a going back in it. And then I think that was the turnaround. So I really think, and Holly, anything you want to add to it, is you can't get away from understanding how much it's costing you to produce your product, how many of those products you're selling, what's your gross profit in relationship to the expenses. And so once again, Holly just, said, okay, I'm going to buckle down and do this, and went back. And her spreadsheet when we first started was this big, but she's got a lot of stuff. It was huge, but that became your template going forward. So that's where I saw a key change in your being able to understand your finances. So my purpose of saying that is everything said you were correct. I wanted to give some people some systematic underlining thoughts about what we actually did in that process.
Yeah, that was really helpful doing that. And before I go into what that did, I'll say that when I fired that company and then I made a document of everything I was looking for in a candidate, and I went on Upwork and I posted it there, and this one woman replied and was able to work within the budget that I had. And previously her job was a tax auditor for 8 years, so I was like, this person's perfect, I will never fucking get audited. So I hired her, and she's been so great to work with, and hiring the right people. And for the document that you gave to me, when I did that, when prices went up because of COVID and shipping became more expensive and raw materials weren't as accessible, prices went up, but I kept my pricing the same. And I kept wondering, like, why, like, I feel like I'm losing money. And I was. And then the minis that I launched, because I was ordering to begin with these at a smaller quantity, the pricing was not that different from the large size. And I priced them under half of what I had priced the large. And when I did that, and I realized I am, at least in the wholesale aspect, losing money, I made the decision to increase the minis by $6. And then the gift sets were $54, and I increased it to $60. And I thought people were going to complain. And then I increased the large from 35 to 42. And every product I had, I increased, thinking there was going to be this backlash. And it must have been 6 months ago, and no one has said anything. And people continue to purchase it. I see reoccurring customers, and you really have to understand what it costs to make a product because if you don't, you might get lucky and you might have a really healthy margin. Or in my case, I just priced it thinking of what it would sell at, and it just wasn't sustainable to do that. So you have to know every cost of what goes into.
Okay, so everybody listening, you want to repeat what she said again and again. You go to YouTube, you get the link, and listen to the last 3-4 minutes of what Holly said. It took a lot of pain for Holly to get there. I got to say, I'm a little bit proud of you as what you just said, but I'm telling you guys, seriously, if there's something that drives me up a wall that makes my hair gray, is that when entrepreneurial's cost of their product goes up, they are too afraid to pass that price to their customers, and they end up hurting their what is already slim profit margins. Now, a good example, you go back to the airlines when they started charging for baggage because fuel was going to go up. All you got to do is you listen to the news and they go, fuel prices next year are going to increase, and you see Campbell's soup is higher. Okay, yes, you can say they're aggressively taking advantage of the situation, but more so they have a CFO that is already calculating in the new future cost, knowing they need to absorb that cost and they need to pass it on to the consumer. So the two takeaways is when companies that are run, that are larger and have CFOs in that are very on top of things, they make sure that the pricing goes up when the cost of input goes up. Entrepreneurs absorb the increase in cost at their own detriment. That's what they do. And the second thing, and this is the other reason I say, if you replay what Holly said, it was just so beautiful, is they get this feeling that if they increase their price, people are not going to buy. And I have told people time and again, just try it with one product and you'll be amazed. And I can't tell you the number of clients to the SBDC that was like, I just, trust me, guys, trust me, do it. And then they came back and they go, not a single person balked, and now I have money to buy a quart of milk. So that was just brilliant what you said. Thank you so much, Holly. We do have a couple questions, and you talked about it a little bit, but what we got two I'm going to put together, okay? So one person wanted to know, how did you find such great packaging? So your process to get the packaging. And then another person said, when did you know to let go from making it in your kitchen to the manufacturer? How did you say, okay, it's time to move to that? So really, I know they happen kind of about the same time. So I'm throwing both of those at you.
Yeah, the packaging, it was from Cosmoprof. That's why I mentioned going to a trade show, because you can compare packaging. It's challenging for two aspects. When you go online or Alibaba, not everything is legitimate. Things can kind of be, I experienced kind of scammy things, and then really weird packaging that was sent to me. And there was a company that was on par with what this company was doing that I found, I think, on Alibaba. And the relationship and the communication, it wasn't there. And so when I found this manufacturer at Cosmoprof, and the fact that they were willing to just work with my SKUs that I wanted to do, the amount of units that I wanted to do per SKU, it just seemed like a no-brainer to me to go with them. But I looked at all the packaging that they had out, and whether somebody's starting a beauty care product or a food product, there are, I don't know now with COVID, but there are, trying to think of what it's called, the like showrooms of companies where it's not the actual manufacturing facility, but they have a showroom. So you can go in and you can pick up the products and feel them and get samples. And, Magic is for fashion. That's in Las Vegas, Cosmoprof. There's a tech conference. Most of them are in Las Vegas. So going to actual trade shows is the best way, I feel, because you meet the people, you see what the product is, and you get the gauge for what the pricing is. And then from going from my kitchen to a manufacturing facility, I wanted to go to a facility to begin with, but I had the amount of money that I had. I eventually secured an SBA loan, and that covered the packaging. There wasn't really enough left over to hire a manufacturer. I would have had to take personal money out. And so I thought, I can just make it myself. I know how. I'm the one who made this formula. And that's the great thing when you start a company and you are the one that really dives in to figure out how to do it. That helps a lot. If something happens, you know how to do it. So when that person approached me at the Malibu Farmers Market, though they eventually sold from me my formula, in the interim, it was really helpful to have somebody else make that. And you have to financially be able to move to a manufacturer when it makes sense and when the sales meet that demand, because you can hire a manufacturer and they can produce a lot of units and you can spend a lot of money, and then you have to then turn around and sell that to get that money back. So just financially has to make sense when you move. But if you can do things yourself, I advise, as long as it makes sense to do it and you're doing whatever it is in a sanitary environment, you can DIY projects yourself.
Another wise statement you made, Holly, about you can't buy a bunch of products just to have it in your inventory you got to get the money back. Another wise statement. So with that being another wise statement, I know the Holly Eve that I met, I don't even know how long ago. It might have been 5 years ago. I'm not even sure. I don't keep track of time. But the Holly Eve I met a long time ago is not the Holly Eve that I'm talking to today. I know the progressions you've gone through. And we talk a lot about the operations and the finance, but there's a personal level, there's an emotional level to starting a company and building it. And I know you've become very keen and you've actually been very supportive and given talks on this subject matter. And I know there's someone in the audience that is feeling a little beat up, a little bit emotionally challenged from everything they're going through. What words of advice can you give, Holly?
To take care of your mental health first. This is a business conversation, so I left the personal stuff out, but I can sum it up pretty quickly just to give somebody a look into that. During that time, shortly after I launched my company, my then husband told me over a phone call he wanted a divorce. I had launched my company 2 months prior. I got really depressed. A lot of just previous childhood trauma, things that I hadn't dealt with, came up from that. I got really suicidal. I ended up in a mental ward. I had to shut down my business for a couple months to really focus on my mental health. And 9 months after that, right after finding out I got into Urban Outfitters, I was hit by a delivery truck walking my dog Violet, a delivery van. I was in the hospital for almost a month and had to learn how to walk again. It took over a year to recover.
By the way, I was one of the first people that Holly called. We had an appointment. She's in the hospital calling me to tell me that she can't make the appointment. I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
It's so bizarre that I talked to you that day, hours before that accident happened. And I was so stressed about Urban Outfitters. And you said, you know, Holly, 99% of the things you worry about will never happen. And then a few hours later, I was hit by a delivery van and it was awful. And there was a male nurse there and I was like screaming and like just really out of it and upset. And he said, you know, 99% of the things you worry about never happen. It was just so bizarre that was said within that amount of time. And that accident really woke me up. I ran my company from my hospital bed because I didn't want to lose Urban Outfitters, and eventually wrote about my story, wanting to help people just to get the story out there. And that's what led Forbes to hiring me. My dog. You know, they didn't publish my article, but they said, would you want to be a contributor to write about entrepreneurship and mental health? I had never written for a publication before, and now I'm a public speaker to schools all over about mental health and suicide prevention. And you know, nothing is worth taking your life, and there's help available. And when you have a company or anything in life, your mental health and your happiness is far more important than selling a fucking product. And so, you know, I think put your mental health first, put your happiness first, and follow what you love doing. And if you're not in a healthy mindset, it doesn't matter how much money you're making, you will not be able to sustain that. So just work on that, be a good person, be a kind person, and I think good things happen.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Holly, for sharing your story. I wasn't even expecting you to share it to that degree, but thank you so much. I know others have benefit. I can tell you right now, we're getting people in the chat that are thanking for you for sharing that. We're getting a lot of response. I even seen in the Q&A somebody that's on their website buying your product right now. So thank you so much. And I've had the wonderful opportunity of being involved with Holly since day one. Bartley, because I had the wonderful opportunity of being a SBDC advisor for over a decade now. I've been involved with them, and I've seen her grow, and I've seen her struggle, and I've seen her succeed. And I always tell people, I don't think it's so much about the company and what you do. Yes, you got to earn enough money to buy a quart of milk. Holly, that's one of my favorite statements. I'll look at your profit and go, but do you have enough money to buy a quart of milk, right? You have to have it. But I think at the end, it's about the journey. It's about the twists and turns and the ability to grow. And I think that's what makes us want to be entrepreneurs. I've had my own company since 25. We are the type of people that don't mind so much throwing ourselves out there and experiencing new things, but also along the line, we get beat up. We definitely get beat up. And, it's so true what you're saying about having to take care of yourself first. That is important. I over the, 30 years of consulting and doing turnarounds and being in a lot of different companies, family-owned businesses, I've heard so many stories where the business took on a life of its own to the detriment of the person. And that's never a good thing. I want to follow up with just a few questions that they have directed towards me regarding some of our conversation. I saw a couple of questions kind of saying the same thing. The spreadsheet I was referring to, guys, I made a custom one for Holly. I don't use templates. Holly can laugh on that because she knows that's my speech. I don't use templates. I use mathematical equations and profitability, but I get into the company and find out what we need to measure. So I work with a lot of clients through the SBDC creating these templates. I don't have a template per se. I'm not a believer in templates that people just download or people are given because they fill it out, but they don't comprehend it. A template needs to be understood. There's a couple other questions we have in there from some of the stuff I said at the very beginning. I will get back to you guys on these questions probably next week on those. And as far as the beginning, I talked about somebody with the tax hiring. They came back and let me know that was from the state of California they were talking about. That would not conflict with the PPP. I could get that one in really quick. So Holly, I just want to say thank you. Once again, guys, we got a awesome entrepreneur to tell their story, and it's been not only a learning process, but it has been an emotional roller coaster for us to live through you vicariously. And I am convinced that the people that listen to you today are feeling as though they gained a lot of information, insight, and I would say inspiration. I'm going to send it back to you, Lauren. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and good luck to everyone. Start your business and keep going. Thank you.
And Holly, if they want to get in touch with you or you want to communicate, you just let Lauren know. She will throw anything in the chat that you want people to know or have access to. Okay. I just want to add that part, Lauren. Okay. I'm giving it back to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lori. And Holly, thank you so much. I know you're off camera now, but please know how grateful and thankful we are for everything that you've shared this morning. You were so vulnerable and just so authentic, and it really resonated, I think, with everyone, with the entire audience. As always, Lori, thank you. Another wonderful interview. So informative and so good. For those of you who have joined us today, thank you. Michael, I see your raised hand, but I need you to add your question or comment into the chat, please, so I can address it. Again, for all of those, for those of you who have joined us this morning, thank you so much for coming along this ride with us. We're having a blast, and we're so glad that you guys are as well. I will continue to stay online so that you can continue to get those links through the chat. If there are any last minute quick questions you'd like to ask as Holly and Lori log off, please feel free to, drop them in. I've also listed my email address. It's lsimpson@lbcc.edu. Should you have any additional follow-up. And then we also have a link to our form. You can submit questions there as well as show topics. And again, thank you, Lori. Thank you, Holly. Another wonderful, wonderful interview. A great show today.
Thank you. And thank you to all the people who are signing in weekly to hear us. I just can't say how happy I am to have you along. I will see you next week. And once again, Lauren, who just really takes care of everything behind the scenes, could not be a show without you. She will be gathering all the information, everything you need to know, and she makes sure she gets it to me too, so I see it as well. Catch up on some of those answers next week, and I hope to see everybody next week. Bye, Lauren. Bye, everybody. Bye,
Lori. Bye,
Thank you
Holly.
again.
Bye. Thank you.
Everyone have a wonderful week. Again, I'll stay on so that you can continue to drop some notes into the chat. Any last minute questions, please send me an email, lsimpson@lbcc.edu, and we'll see you next week at 10 a.m. Thank you so much.
Mom.